Hi, my name is Savannah Meese and I'm a student at Colorado Christian University, and this is my presentation on that we are social chameleons. And this is really based off of chapter 28 in Hattie and Yates' book, The Visible Learning and the Science of How We Learn. And this chapter is about the surprising advantages of being a social chameleon. So today we are going to be learning about how we are actually social chameleons and what does that actually mean, and how we use our social skills to become more effective leaders and instructors. So the first thing that I want you to do is kind of picture these three things, okay? So think about, what are they doing when they come up into your mind? What do they look like? And then are there any similarities that you were pulling out? So think about a group of teenage friends. Maybe think about a group of retired friends, or maybe even just think about your group of friends or a group of friends in general. So many times things that we think about is that groups of people typically that are around each other very often tend to look similarly. And this does not mean that they have to have the same facial features or skin tones, but this is meaning more in terms of fashion and style. And as you can see here in this group of pictures of girls, they're all wearing dresses, or one girl is wearing a skirt. However, they all kind of look the same, that they have the same style going on. Also, this is a picture of the group One Direction. More teenage groups listen to them or have heard of them, and so their style is very similar. Even though they all look kind of differently, their style is very alike. Also, when we look at friends or groups of people that hang out together, they typically are doing the same activities or doing similar activities that they all like to do. So for example, if you were an avid hiker, you probably wouldn't be best friends with someone that absolutely hates the outdoors. You're going to be more drawn to people that are more interested in doing similar things, or more people that are similar to yourself. Also, one thing that we don't have to do that's actually a physical thing is that a lot of our accents become the same depending on where you live, and that is a super unconscious thing that we have. So if you know anybody, or maybe if you're from Boston or the Boston area, you know how that accent is, and that is a very distinct accent that we have in our country that people can pull out pretty easily. So this is just a little joke on that. So Knight states that voice is one of the main important principles in becoming or having a successful partnership. And the important piece of this is that voice includes your nonverbal communication. So this is just not your verbal communication and how we are communicating with each other verbally, but it is also how are we feeling and how we're reacting to situations nonverbally, because majority of what we actually portray is nonverbal. And so if we're only listening to the verbal things that people say and not responding to how people are acting or responding physically to what is going on in the room, or even in just your one-to-one relationship, that can be very damaging to people. So one thing that I want you to do as well, go ahead and just look me straight in the eye and kind of have a staring contest. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, I broke it. I can't do it. One of these things, eye contact is extremely important in relationships. However, making eye contact is not something that we usually do where we hold it for long amounts of time. We kind of usually make an eye gaze, and so it's more flows in a circle. So when you're having a conversation with somebody, you look at their eyes, and then maybe you look down to what they're wearing, or look down to their shirt. Maybe you look at to see what their hands are doing. Maybe you look over to the wall real fast to see what's on the wall, and then you make eye contact again with that person. And so that cycle is actually a good thing to kind of let your brain refresh. Plus, it's a social thing that it's not very comfortable for us to stare at each other directly in the eyes. So making that eye gaze circle is very comfortable, and it is a social thing that is very relaxing. But when you make that eye contact, even if it's just for half a second, your brain registers a ton of information at that half a second. So we're picking up on, how does that person feel? How are they reacting? Are they following me? Do I still have their attention? Do I still have their respect? Or have I completely lost them? So that is why that eye contact is extremely important. Hattie needs also say to understand other people, it entails empathizing with their experience, and this is detected through fine-grained measurement techniques. And those fine-grained measurement techniques are really addressing or looking at those small muscle movements that are happening in somebody's face. There's millions of muscles in your face that you're constantly using, and they release subtle movements that our brains pick up on that we don't really consciously register. So even if one of the examples that they gave is someone watching TV. So if you watch somebody watching TV, you can see that their facial expression is actually changing as they watch the other people or the other scenes on TV, even if they're not really registering it. So they don't have to be smiling, they don't have to be laughing or crying, but they're actually releasing some type of emotional state based off of their facial expressions, even if they're in really small movements. One thing that I'd like for us to do is kind of watch this video, and we're not going to watch the whole thing, but we're going to watch a clip of it, and it does a really good job of showing us how facial expressions and nonverbal communication is extremely important, because we can understand exactly what is happening and how these birds are feeling in this video based off of how they are physically looking. Oops. Let's see if we can get this to play. Okay, so from that we can really see a lot of their emotions. We could see how they're feeling, how they're reacting when the new bird comes in to the situation. And so it's amazing what our brains can do when we are registering things, even though we can't verbally understand what is happening. We can understand what is happening based off their eye expression, based off of how their movements are, and how they're interacting with one another. So this really ties into body synchronism, and how when two people are really walking next to each other, or when they're interacting with each other, their bodies, when they have a good relationship with one another, their bodies kind of become more harmonious. So when you look at these two people walking, you can see that they're walking in stride. So even if their strides might be a little bit different lengths because of their height, they're still lifting their feet at the same time, and they're walking with the same leg at the same time. And so we actually pick up on this very unconsciously, and our brains will register that something might be wrong, or the relationship might not be as strong as we think it might be initially, based off of how their bodies are interacting with one another in a situation like just walking down the street. Oh goodness, I'm sorry. So, did I get you to yawn? Well, yawning is actually a thing that our brain picks up on unconsciously, and we begin mimicking as young as 4 years old. Hattie and Yates quoted this in their book, and there was a study on this. And so whether we like it or not, we start picking up on these things. And this is really important for us as instructors, because the room that we are in, or the people that we are around, are going to start picking up on the little things that we are doing, whether we notice it or we want them to or not, because their brains are going to start mimicking us whether they want to or not. That is saying that we have their attention, which of course we want to have. So why do we do this? Why do we do these little things? Why do we become social chameleons as we age? It's mainly to build relationships. And an interesting study that was done by Montague, Walker, and Andrews, they say that babies as young as 4 months old begin recognizing the different emotions that people have, and they actually begin responding differently based off of those emotions that people are showing just with their facial expressions. That person doesn't have to verbally laugh or cry. They just have to show that emotion on their face, and the baby is going to react differently based off of what emotion is being shown. Over time, we become more experts on this, whether we know it or not. Some people may be more so than others, and so as instructors, it's really important to make sure that we're looking at the facial expressions on those people that are around us, because that can kind of gauge, are those people paying attention? Are they still engaged? Are they interested? Or do I need to do something completely different because it's just not working? You don't even have to ask. You can really pick up on that based off of the people's nonverbal cues that they are going to be giving you in the audience. Okay. So, body gestures serve as vehicles that do not merely assist in the information flow, so how that information is going to progress, but is also intrinsic to how that information is being communicated. So it's something that is actually necessary for that communication to happen effectively. Imagine if you were in a training or maybe in a class, and the instructor walked in the room, they set up their presentation. They didn't make eye contact with you whatsoever. They never smiled when they walked into the room or when you walked into the room. They just started talking. They started going through their presentation. They kind of had a poor posture. Maybe they did something really distracting in their movements, and then they walked out when they were done. Do you think that you learned anything from that? I know that I would not. And so it's really important for us as instructors to realize that even those subtle movements that we might not realize we're doing can really distract from and pull from the information that we want to actually communicate. So that is something to be planning for when you are making these types of presentations. So a couple things that I want you to remember from all of this, okay? So make your body language and express your body language in an open and expressive manner. When you're standing there, you don't want to be standing with your arms crossed and closed off. You want to be standing kind of more open, your arms maybe down to your sides, if you need to, maybe on your hip or holding on to something, if you're one of those people that need to do something with your hands to keep yourself distracted. And so like this woman in the picture right here, she has a more open and relaxed demeanor versus if she was standing there with her arms crossed. It is expressing to the students that you're willing and open for them to come to you for either help or assistance, or just to build that relationship initially. Also, remember to smile. Smile is extremely important. What is the first thing that we do when we meet somebody? We typically smile. Even if we're in a bad mood, we'll throw in a smile just to show that person that we are engaged with you at that moment, and we're trying to get that relationship off to a good start. It does not mean that you have to stand there and smile through your whole presentation, but remember to smile when you're engaging with the students, maybe one-on-one, you're addressing a question, you have a break, and someone else is speaking. Make sure that you are making that good positive contact by smiling and with your eye contact or that eye gaze circle that we talked about earlier. Also, keep your distracting movements to a minimum. Hattie and Yates gives a really good example about an experiment that was done where they placed a person in the room of students who tapped their foot. All of a sudden, more and more people within the room started tapping their foot because they started recognizing that even though it was unconscious. Their brain started picking up on that and tried to mimic that as well as possible, because we fit into groups more so when we are like the people that we are around. So your brain is going to start doing things that you might not be registering. One thing that I know that is really distracting that I know other people pick up on really easily is if someone is standing there and clicking a pen or tapping a pencil on a desk. Usually the person is doing that unconsciously, but it is really distracting to others, and it can actually make others start copying that movement as well. So remember these things when you are planning for your trainings and workshops, and you will be good to go. Okay, thanks. Have a great rest of your day.